Well, hey everyone, Andy Syrewicze here with Altaro Software, and we're right in the midst of Microsoft Ignite here in March of 2021. Lots of interesting news and announcements coming out of the conference, and I thought it'd be fun to get two of my good friends together here, Didier and Eric, to kind of talk about the conference and kind of gather up our thoughts and discuss them a little bit. How's it going, guys?
Good. How you doing, Andy? Just fine, thanks.
Good. Well, hey, we've gotten a lot of information out of Ignite in the last, 36 hours, I guess I would say. And I don't know, COVID aside, it's just felt like a weird conference, right? Because typically you look at Microsoft Ignite and it's in person. There's 20, 30,000 people, right? You're going from session to session, and then you usually have like the evening to kind of digest that information, right? Well, being as it's a virtual event, sessions are running around the clock, right? So I feel like we're not really getting that let me digest what we learned about today type of moment, right? So that's one thing that I've kind of felt that was different. But, I guess what I'd like to start with, being as I've kind of rambled about my own thoughts for a second, but what I want to start about was what are some of your initial thoughts about Microsoft Ignite so far? And Eric, I'll pick on you first, my friend.
Well, I think I'm following what you're saying. The technology portion doesn't feel nearly as deep as it has in years past. I do feel like they are trying to show that, obviously for the last year, this pandemic has been the top. And we're going to look back on this, as all these people dying and all these horrible things happen to. This was a bad year. But I think Microsoft is now showing us that they're going to say, well, there's no going back from that. So let's figure out what we can do to make it not a total loss. And so a lot of the tools that they have been releasing are really heavy on collaboration.
Right.
And the technologies they're showing is this is going to change a lot of the ways that we do communicate with each other. And of course, now in my line of work and the things that I do, it doesn't have a great deal of bearing yet, but I am feeling like this is what they're focusing on, is showing you how to get out of this crummy year that we've all had.
Yeah, definitely a lot of collaboration announcements. For sure, and I'm sure we'll get into that here in a couple of minutes. But all right, I appreciate the insight there, Eric. Didier, how about you? What are your initial thoughts on the conference so far?
Well, of course, missing the in-person thing. That's a thing that goes for everybody. The hallway conversations, the discussions at the booth with the PGs. That's you can't replace that.
Yep, correct.
I must say that Microsoft, if you look at the entire, let's say, focus of the conference, is very much into the future. It's like, wow, it's sometimes a bit overwhelming. I would say, like, wow, this is all coming at us, especially because if I look at my work environment and I look at how people today deal with teams and all the options they have for collaboration, they are already overwhelmed. And the only answer seems to be more tools to deal with the fact of being overwhelmed. So it's like... There is a lot of stuff to digest, even today in the present, and then there's all these things that are coming that we have to prepare for and have to think about and plan for. So it's kind of a tsunami almost of new technologies in that space that are, let's face it, almost Star Trek-like at a given moment. If you've seen the demos, it's like, holy, that's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing, but it's also sometimes a bit scary. Right. The Viva thingy.
Yep.
I know some people at work who are not. They're concerned. They're concerned about their privacy. Is this really to help me? This is like. There's going to be a lot of evangelizing around it, and it's an interesting, brave new world that's coming at us. That's for sure. But
definitely, yeah. So, Viva, I think, is definitely an interesting part for me because, like, I get where they're going with it, and like, hey, it's been a crappy year. We're all physically separated because of the pandemic. How can we help employee wellness, and how can we help people train? And so I get that side of it, but to your point, what are the privacy implications of that? If I'm a rank and file worker, I would have concerns about that too. And so I think there needs to be a lot more trust built in that platform. There needs to be a lot more emotional trust instilled in the community yet. But hopefully, that platform will, do leaps and bounds for everybody, hopefully. Any thoughts from you guys on that?
Well, the learning curve is going to be one thing, that's for sure.
Right.
The trust, I think, will come with the use cases and if it's used properly. I mean, it's a bit like having a bad manager, right? If they have the tools, I mean, you have to have some tools to track what people are doing, even if it's only to organize the work. But if you start looking at those tools as a mean of controlling people, then it goes sideways.
Yep.
And I think that's not per se the tool, that's how you use it. And I think if they would manage to prevent the tool from being used wrong, that might help build trust and adoption. So
right.
maybe there's something to do there, but it's early days yet. Yeah.
Very much so.
And on the other hand, it's as you say, this pandemic, it's giving it a nice positive twist. But on the other hand, people are also tired of being in an online tool
right.
collaborating. That is like, here there's even more tools to collaborate online, and we're going to make the experience more pleasant. While the only thing that people want is just want to get out of the virtual environment
right.
for a while and have a coffee with my colleague or something, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, to your point, you made a good point earlier about hey, we're adding more tools on top of what we already have. And, I feel like if I go and look at the last year and a half, I feel like a lot of end users are just now to the point to where they're comfortable with Teams, at least Teams chat and the concept of sharing files through Teams. And maybe they're starting to get their head wrapped around SharePoint, even though SharePoint's been here forever. I find a lot of people still don't have their heads wrapped around SharePoint. But like you said, now we're going to complicate things even more by integrating learning, employee wellness, and everything else that's packed into Viva. So yeah, definitely, I could see some.
So, and in real life, what I also see, which makes it even more complicated, is that companies decide that, well, we're not going to use SharePoint, we're going to use something else. And then you get the combination of 2 or 3 environments, because everybody wants to build an environment, right? Nobody just builds a tool anymore.
Right.
So they have to have everything. And then you see this potpourri of 2 or 3 tools, which the functionality is basically an all 3, but I like feature A bit more in this suite and feature B a bit more in that suite. And it's like, oh, this is not helping, guys. I mean, that's something I see as well. That's a challenge.
Yep.
So if you go for the Teams experience, my advice is always, it's been a bit like with Windows Server, right? Try to do as much as you can, the 20/80 rule, with what's in the product, and only go to another solution if you really can't create or do what you need to do with what's in the box.
Right.
Because otherwise it becomes a bit of a governance and adoption mess, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
It's hard enough as it is for many people.
Yep. Good insight. All right, well, let's move on to our next question here. And the next question I have is, so we're in the middle of day 2 of Ignite. I think there's going to be a couple more sessions streamed tomorrow as well. But from what you guys have seen so far, what is the favorite feature or enhancement that you've seen announced so far? And Eric, I'll start with you again.
Well, again, back to something that has nothing to do with my job, the mesh. And I think everybody said mesh so far if they get to go first. So I get to, sorry, Didier, I'm going to take that away from you.
That was mine.
But I'm really kind of looking forward to seeing how we can use that, not in our professional lives, but in our private lives too, with the sharing of the being there and being the experience and what that means for us. Back to Didier's comment about the future. So maybe mesh version 1 is not the one that we're waiting for. Maybe it's version 4, right? That really kind of got me excited to see what we're doing in that space.
Kind of really reminded me of Ready Player One,
Right?
It's like
I saw that comment many times.
Yeah,
yes.
It's like Oasis, pre-alpha,
Okay.
What are your thoughts, Didier?
On that particular subject, or my favorite thing I saw announced? No. So I'm going to be very prosaic about it. I mean, and it's due to the pandemic probably as well. But the fact that VPN troubleshooting, the diagnostics are being enhanced, I'm like, yay! I can use every pound of leverage they can throw at me and for that sort of stuff.
Yep.
So I'm quite happy to see that a lot of the improvements that are coming in networking still. It keeps evolving. Due to the size of environments I work in, I'm not that much focused on the ultra scalability of it all. I'm quite happy with 10,000 users. So I don't really need 100,000 VPN users, But the extra capabilities to troubleshoot, to manage, to make it a better experience, those are all very welcome. So as I have been focused on networking in Azure a bit, so that's what I was looking at as one of the more nice improvements that I saw come out at Ignite. Yeah.
Nice. I know, just kind of looking through my list, a couple of things that I really enjoyed seeing. So Mesh, of course, definitely look cool. Like you said, Eric, I'm really kind of interested to see how that integrates in with our personal life, right? There's so many applications of that technology I think is really, really interesting. Power Automate Desktop I thought looked really cool too. So I've become really interested in the Power Platform in the last year or two, kind of that whole idea of, their message of empowering the creators in every organization really kind of resonated with me. So I thought that was really kind of a neat reveal. And then more practically, and most IT pros are probably going to agree with me, is that managing printers sucks. Managing printers just sucks. Universal Print looks pretty nice. So I know so many situations over the last couple of years where it's like, okay, we're nearly Azure, 100% Azure based, but we still need to maintain a print server on premises for reason A, B, or C.
Because that paperless society hasn't happened yet, right?
Right. So it's just nice to see Universal Print like kind of finally have its day, right? So that was nice to see as well.
Yep. I'll believe that when I see it. I've been hearing the words universal and print together for at least 20 years, and it has never happened.
Wait, the HP universal print driver, do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. I remember Tricerat taking a stab at it, and they were probably the best, and it was still not great.
Yeah. Sometimes I had fun with printers. I still fondly remember the days that I had to have certificate-based port authentication working on the printers, right? That was a very nice technical endeavor, and especially if you succeed at the end. But it's always been very interesting to do that. So I'm like, I'll happily hand that to another, let's say, solution that will handle all that for.
Good times. Well, speaking of, announcements and content, this kind of is a nice segue into the next question I have. One thing that I saw that was missing from any of our responses to that last question was, Windows Server and really any deep dive Azure IaaS type of stuff. And to me, that's because there hasn't been a whole lot of fanfare about any of it, right? And I mean, so Windows Server 2022 is in pre-release, right?
Yep.
And
I've got it installed, actually.
Yeah. I've got a VM running in my lab as well, and
got a domain controller running it.
Is the domain level still 2016? Because 2019.
It's still 2016. I haven't found a schema update. It's still the same version.
Yep.
The thing is, the communication was a bit lightweight, so to speak, so I'm still trying to figure out by myself what's in there.
And just like Ignite a couple years ago when Server 2019 was announced, there are all these slides about Azure, M365. Oh, by the way, we released Windows Server 2019, and oh, hey, Azure. You know what I mean? It's almost like a footnote these days.
But for the defense of Microsoft, of course, they have the Windows Server Day, right?
Right, they do. Which is just a nice event that they put on. The Windows Server team does a fantastic job with that event. So.
But also, if you follow the theme of Ignite this year, they're really, really, really capitalizing on like the low code, no code.
Yes.
Things that you're taking away from people, the traditional technology things where you had to know everything, your batch files, your scripting, your program, you had to know something about everything. kind of moving their technology away from that and into the person of somebody who just really, I just need to get my job done. I don't care about any of this stuff. I just give me what I need to do to do my work. So if you bring IaaS into that conversation, you're going to disrupt it.
Yep. It makes sense.
Right?
It makes sense. And
I'm hoping that something comes out of it and eventually gets back, because I'm an infrastructure guy and I hope I never have to do anything else in my life. But, I get why they're not mixing their signals on this particular front.
Yeah.
I can assure Eric that he'll have to do infrastructure until he retires. I've said it before. I've never seen the IT headcount go up so much since we are doing cloud. There is so much to do, and there is so much work. So I can really understand why they want to focus on productivity and no code and make it as easy as possible to get your job done, because there is so much to do. It's unbelievable. Really.
One of the keynotes today mentioned they have something like 500 million programs that need to be translated for cloud out there. There's so much more to be done than there are people to do it.
Yeah.
So none of us are going to lose our jobs, but they're all going to change, and you just kind of wonder how is that going to look? Are we actually headed toward an infrastructureless future?
I remember the times that you had to go into infrastructure because all the developer roles were going to get outsourced. And infrastructure is never going to go away. Well, it never goes away; it just goes somewhere else.
Right.
It's interesting you brought that up, Eric. The low code, no code. That's definitely a key message that they've hit on time and time again. And there was one session, and of course I can't remember the speaker's name now. I'll have to go look at and put the link to it below this video. But basically what the guy did was he struggled with anxiety, chronic diagnosed anxiety, and using the Power Platform was able to create an application that helped him and his community kind of track and provide a kind of a foundation of assistance for him and his community around mental health during the pandemic. It was just kind of one of those really interesting use cases where you actually see technology providing real impact in somebody's life, right? Which is one of the things I always like to see during these events. So,
yep.
Okay, go ahead, Didier.
Yeah. Well, as we were talking infrastructure as a service, there have been some announcements right around the Windows Admin Center in Azure.
Yep.
So that's kind of funky to see that a tool that was basically focused on replacing on-prem administrative tools is now making it all the way into Azure to manage both environments. So that's kind of a funky way of looking at things. And the other thing that got my mind today was the security with the Generation 2 VMs in IaaS. So there's a lot of the system guard, the virtualization-based security that's available now. So that's good to see.
Yes. And it kind of lines up with their, one of their key security pillars that they announced during one of the day one keynotes was that assume breach, right? A lot of the enhancements that they've announced kind of helps address that and the other pillars. So that was, I agree with you. I always like to see the security stuff. So, Any other thoughts on that before we move on to our last question, gents?
Go ahead.
All right. So, we've had a lot of theory, a lot of announcements. One thing I always like to try and do is all this new stuff that's been talked about, where can we practically apply it? And I guess my question would be, do you see out of the get-go any practical use cases, like right away? Sometimes it takes time to figure out what the practical use cases are and what the applications are. But is there anything that you've seen in the last day or two that you're just like, oh, hey, yeah, that would be really useful. Let's take a look at that, and that'll help me solve, problem X. Have you seen anything like that? Didier, I'll start with you.
Well, yesterday there was this demo where they were looking at some sort of a valve system in the virtual reality and discussing the problems. It reminded me the first time we used to have HP tape libraries, physical ones. And one day an engineer had to come and replace, I think, a cable directing one of the tape drive or the tape robot arms, and they had a video explaining it to them from 3 different angles, what cables to disconnect and what to do and how to connect the replacement part. So it sort of reminded me of like we've started this journey a long time ago, and that is only going to get better.
Right.
So I can really see for maintenance from a practical perspective that somebody who has to do maintenance on an engine or on a medical system, and you don't do it every day, that there is a 3D environment where you can actually touch the components, see what you need to do, and then can do it for real, that sort of things. But I must admit, it seems to be always a bit out of my Azure and data center activities, right? I don't really need a 3D, let's say, simulation of my PowerShell script, or but that's what I see. Maybe the first practical use cases for that. Combine that with 3D printing. I mean, there's all kinds of funky stuff to be done. Medical, I'm pretty sure for medical reasons as well, that you can help medical professionals feel a bit more secure about certain procedures, or discuss this with a colleague on the other end of the world that might be the subject matter expert. I think there's a lot of potential there. But again, for my daily workload, I'm like, I don't see this coming to my desk that soon. Let's put it that way.
Time will tell. Time will tell, right? All right. Thank you, sir. Eric, how about you?
Well, I'm going to come at it from a different angle. Less about specific technology, and to kind of tie in some things I've heard from everybody is, so yesterday during his keynote, I think it's Jared Spataro, I believe is his name, made a comment that, everybody's talking about 2020 as the year that we all worked from home. And he said, no, that's not it. It's the year that we all did work in the cloud. And in my opinion, that is exactly the wrong way to think about it. In that if you look at everything that they have announced in the last couple of days, work is never done in the cloud, ever. Work is always done by the human being wherever they happen to be. And with all this, so right now I'm working from home like so many people are, but I've got an elderly relative in another state. So if it turns out that, he just needs somebody there, not as hospice care, but just somebody around, like to help him out if, he needs something, I could go there and continue to do all of my work. And it's like nothing has changed, right? So work then becomes centered around me, not around a physical location of any kind whatsoever.
It's a thing you do.
And I know, like, right. And like, I know, Andy, you've used the quote several times, Arthur Clarke's, any sufficiently advanced
technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Exactly. So, and it's something I read a long time ago. I think it was probably David Pratt, maybe, I don't remember, but something about the only truly intuitive computer is the one that you don't know about, that you use without being aware of its existence. And so when you look at like they're putting on the headset, and all of a sudden I'm in the room with this other person, I'm seeing what they're seeing, and we're walking around the same table and we're doing all that. These are the steps we get to the intuitive computer that we all dream about, and the ability to say I am working wherever I am, or I'm not working anymore. I'm done for the day. Right. So I think it has less to do with a singular technology and more about the overall direction of where it's all heading.
Nice. Yeah, you both had both of these very profound practical use cases, right? And now I'm going to be the chump that brings up this single Teams feature that I really like. And everybody watching is going to roll their eyes and be like, "Really, Andy?" So yes, Mesh is really cool, and the applications for Mesh are amazing. Don't get me wrong. Selfishly, from a practical standpoint, those of you that watch Altaro videos know that I'm in front of the camera quite frequently, doing a lot of webinars. One thing that I have always enjoyed doing more than webinars is in-person speaking, because of that, in-person element to the discussion, right? And I think one little feature that they added to Teams that I think is really neat is Standout Mode, right? I started calling it like streamer mode because that's what it reminds me of. It reminds me of game streamers where, they green screen themselves into, the shot of the game, right? But it's kind of the same thing for teams, right? Because now as the presenter presenting the information, I can have a little bit more of a personal connection with the audience that I'm presenting to, right? Because that's one thing that's really tough with virtual presenting is that so many people are, looking at their monitor over here, or, you don't really have that sense of connection unless you're making eye contact with the camera, right? And that's hard for a lot of people. For the longest time, I had a little cat that I had taped on my camera, and I would tell myself, talk to the cat. Talk to the cat, right? That way the viewer sees me looking at them, right? And I think that standout mode in Teams just, it can't hold a candle to the applications of mesh, right? But like I said, selfishly, practically for me, I think it's a neat feature. So
I don't think that's an eye-rolling thing at all.
Well, that's good. That's good. So, well, guys, I think we're about 20, 25 minutes in, so I think we'll let everybody get back to their day. But as always, appreciate you both coming and sharing your insights and your thoughts. And, once Ignite wraps up and the community has had a couple of weeks to digest things, maybe we should do another one of these and, kind of see where we're at in a couple of weeks. What do you guys think?
Yep. Sounds like a plan.
That sounds good. Sounds good.
So you're going to confront us with what we said today. Yeah. Okay.
We'll be like, okay, well, on this date,
you didn't say there would be a test, Andy.
Right. That sounds good. All right. Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate your time. And everyone watching, appreciate you guys tuning in. Again, we'll have more details about this video below, as well as some key bullet points and some key findings and thoughts from Microsoft Ignite. Other than that, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you later.
Bye-bye.